All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford's fight is dead in the water according to the boxing media. And that's because Crawford and the boxing media are killing the fight. And that has major ramifications on the sport of boxing. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, I'm here today to talk to you about the biggest fight in boxing that should happen, but probably will not happen, and probably will not happen because the powers that be in boxing don't want it to happen. It's a gigantic fight that is big money for both fighters. It is a lot of enjoyment for boxing fans, but that apparently is not high on the list of the boxing media or Top Rank, Terence Crawford included. And that particular fight is Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford. If you are a boxing fan and you've not heard discussions about this fight taking place, then you are lying about being a boxing fan. It is absolutely all over the place and has been all over the place for years. And why? Because it is clearly one of the biggest fights in boxing. And let me define what I mean by big fight. Revenue. The revenue in that fight is absolutely gigantic. Just think about it. You have Errol Spence Jr., right, who is one of the biggest names in boxing. I believe he's the top revenue producer in boxing over the last couple years, with the grand exception of maybe Deontay Wilder. However, Deontay Wilder did not have two fights in 2021 or 2020 like Errol did. So you got to say it's probably Errol. If it's not Deontay Wilder, it's Errol. But trust me, there's a comparison coming in this video between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. But regardless, it is a huge monetary fight. It's going to have a huge crowd and it's got a huge fan base for the fight. Terence Crawford is well known. He's listed as one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world. And I already told you, Errol Spence Jr. is one of the biggest draws in the gates that he brings in and one of the biggest pay-per-view guys. Huge, right? The crowd size, let's talk about that for a minute. A fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford in the AT&T Stadium will probably bring in excess of 60,000 fans at an elevated price, right? Where they say maybe the average price might be 100. I believe that the average price of a ticket for Errol Spence, Terence Crawford could be 150, and they would still the same amount of tickets because these guys are well-known boxers. And that is a huge place that Errol Spence Jr. sold out with Mikey Garcia. And Mikey Garcia, I'm sorry, is not a bigger name in boxing than Errol Spence. The only reason, than Terence Crawford, the only reason anybody ever makes that argument is this. Well, he was Mexican, and there's a lot of Mexicans in Texas, so that's the reason it sold. Despite the fact that Mikey Garcia has never sold like that before in Texas, and he didn't, and after that he fought in Texas again, I do believe, and he didn't sell like that then. And if he fights another fight in Texas, he won't fight like that. He won't have a crowd like that either. Why? Because he's not from Texas. If Mikey Garcia was from Dallas, had been raised in Dallas, had been fighting his amateur career in Dallas, then maybe. But a hometown guy fighting at his hometown gym, a hometown stadium, I think it's fair to get a guy to credit, okay? But that's not how people do it. But anyway, I say that it's going to be an absolutely huge crowd. Also, it's significant to the welterweight division. There's not been an undisputed welterweight champion in years. If Errol Spence beats Terence Crawford or Terence Crawford beats Errol Spence, they automatically vault themselves to the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. And I don't think that there's any argument about that. So any argument about it being Canelo or anybody else goes out the window. Plus, since there was such a big event around it, the guy that wins is going to take all that energy into his next fight. It is absolutely huge for the sport of boxing. However, it doesn't seem like they want it. And this is why I'm saying that they don't want it. We'll get to the Terence Crawford blatantly saying he doesn't want it, and Bob Arum blatantly saying that he could envision it not happening. But let's just go to how they treat Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua at the same time. So you got two fights, right? Both of these fights are supposed to be huge fights. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, huge fight. Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, they say is a huge fight. However, the problem with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua is that it's not realistic. And it's not and the fact that it's not realistic doesn't have to do with the willingness of these two guys to fight each other. It has everything to do with the fact that Tyson Fury is in arbitration with Deontay Wilder, and you have to wait till there's a decision made in that to know what's going to happen. But you have not seen the boxing media stop promoting Tyson Fury at all. I went through my news feeds, and all I see is Tyson Fury. It's Tyson Fury every 3 sentences, every 3 articles. Tyson Fury says this. Boxing article, boxing article, boxing article. Tyson Fury says this. Boxing article, boxing article. Tyson Fury says this. That is an attempt to market Tyson Fury and to keep Tyson Fury's name relevant, right? When he himself has not fought in over a year and doesn't look like he's going to fight maybe in 2 years. Some people are saying, well, the earliest this fight is going to happen between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury is November. Right? That's around the time that they think it can happen. Well, if you fought last in February of 2020 and you don't fight again to November of 2021, dude, that's 2 months short of 2 years. 2 months short of 2 years. But they have not stopped putting the press out on this guy at all. And they have most of the boxing world convinced that this is a fight that can take place and that they want to take place. So why the bad attitude about Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, but yet which is a fight that can happen. Absolutely, positively can happen. We're 1 fight away from undisputed. 2 fights away from undisputed, excuse me. Errol fights Ugas. He's got 3 belts. The next fight is undisputed. Terence Crawford ain't got nobody else to fight, and there's no other welterweights where people are saying, oh, you need to fight this guy. That's not the case at heavyweight. It's completely unrealistic fight. It's not as big financially. It's not. Unless you're telling me some independent billionaire is going to put all the money in, right? That would make it bigger. But still, you could say, well, why don't Errol Spence and Terence Crawford go to that same billionaire and see if he'll pay for that and give them the same money? That would be the only way you would know if those were equal values, if what you're using is one individual angel investor giving all the money up. That's one guy. So all you got to do is say, well, what would that guy do if he was offered the Errol Spence-Terence Crawford fight? He might take that too and overpay that too. Those guys are from America, and it's undisputed. You got a guy in the UK, a guy in Middle East trying to make a fight between 2 UK fighters not even for undisputed. Why wouldn't they take that fight? I think that they very, very well may be. But you do not hear that tone coming through the media. You don't hear those ideas being put across by the media because the media is with Bob Arum and Top Rank. Heavy influence on them. So that's, I believe, why you see the 2 fights being treated so differently. In one situation, Bob Arum's fighter, Tyson Fury, he wants that name out there and constantly talking about fights so that he doesn't get forgotten because he's not forgotten. He's not fighting. So they push that imaginary fight in the middle of an arbitration that Bob Arum knows he's in, but yet pours water all over Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford's because Bob Arum doesn't want that fight. Bob Arum wants, I do believe, for his 140 pounders and Terence Crawford to get all the belts at 147, and then they can have their own round robin if they choose to. If they choose not to, they don't have to. But at the end of the day, they make all the money, and they don't have to split that money with the PBC. That's what I think is going on. You can let me know what you think in the comment section, and with that, I'm out. Peace.